Hey folks, thank you again for coming to Back to Basics for Season 3. Today we're going to speak with Jullian Hayes, and we're going to find out what he's all about. But the word that we're going to be using today is epigenetic. What is epigenetic? Is it biological? Is it genetics? We don't know till we get to the episode, and that's what we're going to talk about. And why is it so important in our lives? Why does it matter? So let's stop talking to me. Let's go and speak with our guest today on Back to Basics. I'll see you there. Talk to Hi, folks. My name is Girish. Thank you again for coming to Back to Basics. Today, we're going to speak with Jullian. We're going to talk about, health and data. But then there's other things that we're going to talk about. Many different things. But there's one thing that we do have in common is that we like health. We all know about sports. And we just recently talked about something else too. But we won't get into this episode today. That's a separate topic altogether. But I will tell you after the episode is done. So let's speak with Jullian. Let's go and get to know him better, who he is and what he is. Jullian, how are you? And thank you for coming to Back to Basics.
Thank you so much for having me. I am doing super fantastic. As I told you, when we first got connected here, that I'm living the dream, no complaints at all. So once again, thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Jullian, thank you again. Before we start about the whole topic today, what does Back to Basic mean to you?
Oh man, back to basics is I like to think of it, it's a way of getting maximum efficiency and effectiveness to get the result.
Hmm. As simple as that, isn't it?
It
I mean,
is.
so you're telling me that data drives us and makes a story about us and tells us the whole entire story? You think that's how it is?
Yes, absolutely. I think data is a very, especially in a lot of things, but especially as I'm learning in the health world, data tells you a lot. It can really give a lot of insights into how a person's living on a day by day basis.
Thank you so much, Julian, for coming here, and thank you again for answering this question. The first question that I have is, what is epigenetics?
Mhm.
Can you explain that to everyone before we get into the details of that, if you don't mind?
Absolutely, and I'll share a few examples with that. So when just the literal definition is when you hear epigenetics, you hear epi means above, and then of course genetics is the gene. So this is the thing above the gene. So you always hear that you are your genes. That is true to a certain standpoint because our genes are not going to change. The thing that can change though is how that gene is going to express itself, and so that's where you have basically. And one example I always like to talk about is what makes a queen bee compared to the other worker bees. And it's
Mm.
one simple difference is that they're all fed royal jelly at a certain standpoint, but at some magical point, they're all cut off except one. And that one turns into the queen bee, all because of the royal jelly. So something as simple as your diet can change the way of your expression and what you're becoming. It's often you can also see this in identical twins, where one twin is eating rather healthily, exercising, sleeping well, watching your stress and those kind of things. Whereas another one is maybe drinking a little too much alcohol, a little too stressed, and not doing basic lifestyle things. And they're going to have a whole different trajectory for their life. They have similar genes, right? Because they're identical, but the way that they're expressing is different because of how they're interacting and treating their body. And we can call this the environment as well as what I like to say in that instance.
Yeah, thank you so much for answering that question, and thank you again for explaining that. You gave me some few examples, but is there a big example that you can give that people can understand even better than what you just explained right now?
Yeah, and so you can look at this. So we hear about different supplements, such as let's take vitamin D for example. Everybody understands what vitamin D is.
Mm.
It's often said that the sun is the best source of vitamin D. Well, there are certain people who do not. Um, their receptors in their body is not absorbing that vitamin D as well. So even if they're outside as much as the next person, they're not getting adequate levels of vitamin D.
Mm.
This is where the genes and epigenetics part comes in. So therefore, this is then where you have to look into things such as supplementation, and it's more beneficial for them. And that example that I'm sharing is me. I'm out in the sun a lot, but if I never supplemented or anything, I would not have adequate levels of vitamin D. Whereas
Mm.
one of my best friends doesn't need to.
Mm.
He gets just long as he's out in the sun, plenty of time, he's getting this adequate level of vitamin D. And so this is a myriad of examples. And another one is when you think about blood sugar and insulin, and some people talk about diabetes and everything.
Mm,
I don't like to use a lot of those words because I don't like people to identify with those things. But in this example, we'll go with that blood sugar dysregularity. And you can have some people who are more predisposed to others,
mm,
but it doesn't mean that they're going to necessarily have that manifest in their life. It's
mm,
just more that they have more of a higher probability and predisposition.
mm.
And once again, that comes down to the epigenetics of how they're interacting with their environment on the day, the exercising, the eating, and so forth.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again for explaining that. It seems like I'm pretty sure there must be some listeners must be asking these questions that if you can give us a better example than that. So thank you again for explaining that. How important is exercise and nutrition for you, Julian?
Mhm. Personal, or would you like to say, okay, let's do two angles. So I like to say, just from a day by day basis, exercising is the thing that pretty much holds everything together. Uh, um, work can get stressful. You still have personal relationships. Sometimes people can nag you. It's the everyday, it's part of the overall human experience. And a lot of times in business, as much as we want to, we don't control a lot of things. Like I can't control like clients and people coming to me and podcast listeners and none of that stuff. And so exercising gives me that one thing that I can't control. I can fully control to put my shoes on and go run. I can fully control to pack my gym bag and go to the gym tonight, which I am after this conversation.
Mm,
I can choose what food to eat.
mm,
I have 100% control of that, and that gives me that foundation that helps me stay rooted.
mm,
Now, on a scientific level, when we think about exercising, over the course of a few months of consistently exercising, you could change about around, I believe it's about 6,000 or so genes
mm,
positively just from exercising.
mm,
If there was a way that pharmaceutical companies could find a way to put the benefits of exercise in a little pill or some sort of thing, it
mm,
would be the greatest thing out there.
mm,
Because with all the tools, the gadgets, and all of this, the biohacking, all that, I love it all. But exercising is still number one. And the
mm,
good thing is, it's free. We all can do that. That's
mm,
accessible to everyone.
mm. Yeah, thank you again. When we go to fitness trainers, they usually say that it's 80% eating and 20% exercise. Do you disagree with that, or do you think that every shape and body and age is very different and semantics are a little different?
No, I agree with that premise there. Nutrition is far more important. It's not impossible to out exercise your diet, but you have to be doing some serious training. Some
Mm,
serious training. I'm talking about hours, multiple hours a day training, and on a day by day basis. So for most people, the nutrition is the focal point, and then the exercising. Because I don't remember off the top of my head, but I want to say maybe it takes an hour or a little more to, if you were going to run or something, to burn off a cheeseburger or something like that,
mm,
where that, and you just don't have enough time in the day
mm,
to make that up. So exercising is most definitely, I would even say, I would probably even raise that a few more points higher,
mm,
probably even 85-15,
mm,
maybe even 90-10, just with exercising, or with nutrition and exercising. Because exercising is important when you have maybe a more of a sports specific goal or a certain physique looking goal. But
mm,
if it's just general health, then nutrition is probably more like 90-10.
mm. Yeah, yeah. So you're actually talking about people who are training for, let's say, a marathon or a
Mhm,
sport for a league, a baseball league and all that
mhm.
fun stuff. But if you're talking about regular folks who are regular people, they are from 80 and 20%, and that's what you're talking about. Is that correct?
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Thank you again for explaining that. Let me ask you this: when we say biological age,
Mhm.
what does that mean to you?
Yeah. So we all know. Somebody asked you how old you are, and that's how old you are chronologically, how many trips around the sun that you have. Biological aging is something totally different. It's your age on a cellular level. It's the age that it's your true age. We've often seen those people who are maybe 55 years old chronologically, but they look and they're moving like they're 30 years old. And then
Mm,
we've also seen the reverse of that as well. And so that's in a nutshell an example of that. Now, biological age consists that there's measurements now, and there's a test that you can do now that gives you a an inside look at your biological age, and also it gives you a breakdown
mm,
of the rate that you're aging every year. So
mm,
for myself, I believe it was for every year that I get older, I'm aging at 0.75.
mm.
And so
So,
I'm going to work to reduce that. But that gives me an idea of how I'm living. It's some of the supplements and interventions that I'm doing, how they're working, and if they're not working for somebody else. And so it once again it goes back to basics of helping you be efficient and effective to get the result that you're aiming for.
mm. Yeah, but thank you again, Julian, for that. I mean, that is something to do with nutrition. That is something to do with exercise. But I think even beyond that, I think right, people they talk about skincare. They talk about
Mhm,
taking care of yourself, and I guess meditation too is one of them, and sleeping
mhm.
well is another, and drinking water is another, right? So it's not just these two items like exercise and nutrition. I think it's like pretty much everything, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I'm glad you said that, especially the meditation part, because once again, meditation is and when you think about meditation, I think sometimes we overcomplicate it. I like to just say maybe moments of silence or even prayer,
Mm,
some sort of way to really quiet the noise that's surrounding you.
mm,
But and I forgot the number as well, but this is I believe it's around a third of your genes once again can be positively uh, benefited
mm,
from meditation over the course of a couple of months of consistent practice.
mm.
So once again, these simple basic things.
Mm. Yeah, Julian, last season on season two, we talked about meditation, and a lot of people, when they think of meditation, they think of that you got to sit down and do the yoga portion,
Mhm.
sitting up and all that. But it's actually not the case. We actually talked about just like what you said is just you just sitting down in front of a TV, and that's just taking a deep breath, and that is meditation also. And people they don't get that. Am I right or wrong in that?
No, you're correct on that. And another way is even walking meditation.
Right.
Just without, take a break from listening to your podcasts or take a break from listening to your music. And as you're walking, just gradually focus on your breath.
Mm,
You know, maybe 5 seconds, 5 seconds, or 3 seconds, three on three. Just
mm.
focus it on inhaling 3 seconds, exhaling 3 seconds. And then if you want to add more, you can hold for a little bit as well. But you know, so it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't have to be just sitting down where your legs are crossed and you're making sounds and nothing like that. For me, a lot of times I like to take one of the key habits for me is taking what I call like a halftime break in the middle of the day
That's right.
and maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and I just sit there,
Mm,
think about how my day's going and what needs to be done for the rest of the day.
mm,
Is there something troubling me? And then also just give me some time to breathe because I
mm,
tend to be a more high energy guy, and
mm,
so I need this time to kind of equally bring myself to a little more of an equilibrium.
mm. Julian, thank you again for that. Have you noticed from what your experience is, and we'll get into that details of that, is do you think back in back moons ago, like baby boomers time and today's time, do you think things have changed when it comes to the exercise and activities that we're coming out with different types of exercises versus the old ways of doing stuff? Do you think that we're getting lazier day by day, or are we getting active day by day? I mean, what do you think of that?
I think life is becoming much more convenient for us,
Mm,
so we don't. So a lot of the activities that would require us to do that would require us to move, we don't necessarily have to do anymore. Like I don't necessarily have to even walk to the grocery store. I don't have to or drive to the grocery store per
Mm,
se. I can just order it now. I can have all my food here. If I wanted to, I could just order everything and never leave this house.
mm,
And so a lot of people maybe even go to the gym maybe 3 or 4 times a week.
mm,
But if you're not doing any other activity outside of that, look at the totality of the week. You
mm,
have 4 hours of activity, and the other time you're just sedentary.
mm,
So you're barely better. I mean, good for you for even doing those 4 hours. Don't get me wrong.
mm,
But in the grand scheme of things, compared to even a couple of generations ago,
mm,
you're not nearly getting the activity that a couple of generations ago were getting.
mm,
This is, and that's the, I guess that's the downside. Some of technology as well is that it makes life super convenient and easy for us.
mm. Yeah, we'll get into slowly onto the technology side of things, but before we do that, there's a new segment that we have started on Back to Basics, which is the rapid fire round.
Hmm.
We're going to be asking you some questions and sentences, and whatever pops in your head, then we'll just go from there. Are you game with that?
Let's do it. I love it.
Awesome. The first one is going to be data,
Necessary,
genetics,
empowering
express,
yourself,
queen bee,
fascinating,
environment,
critical,
exercise,
non-negotiable,
nutrition,
game changer,
health,
wealth.
age,
Hmm. Beautiful,
chronicle age,
overrated,
biological.
underrated,
Okay. Um, maintain,
hmm. Difficult,
edge,
everything.
executive health.
Hmm. Legendary.
Okay. The next one is going to be Julian.
Ah, curious.
Curious. And if you had to choose between health and wealth, which one would you pick?
Health.
Because.
With health, you can always make more wealth.
Awesome. And the last one is going to be back to basics.
Hmm. Critical.
Critical. Thank you. Thank you so much for playing the rapid fire round. You know, the reason why I asked about the health and wealth, I've been told for many, many years that by my elders and my mom, that health is wealth.
Hmm.
So, but you chose health instead of wealth. What is your thought process of that? Because we've been hearing the health and wealth for a long time, right?
Hmm.
So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, now that I can look back on it, my father's been gone for almost 3 years now. And during that time, a lot of that time, because I moved back, I was kind of like a caretaker. And you have this thing of like, man, I want to get this in my career. I'm working for this. I'm working for that. I'm working for that. And you can, that can consume you.
Hmm.
And I imagine this is like some people who are in their career and they want to get to the next stage of managerial, or maybe they're on their way to the C-suite or ambitions for that. And with all this ambition is great and everything, but sometimes you can lose sight of the very basic things of life.
Hmm.
And I know people, I used to overlook, oh, like, be grateful, blah 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 blah. It's like, yeah, whatever. I'm trying to do this thing. I got big dreams here.
Hmm.
And seeing my dad go through multiple surgeries and amputations, and hearing him say, something as simple as, I wish I could drive my truck again. I
Hmm.
miss driving my truck.
Hmm.
I miss doing things for myself. I
Hmm.
can't, when he's got his prosthetic leg,
Hmm.
and he's like, it feels good to be able to just walk again and not just be consumed to a wheelchair, confined to a wheelchair.
Hmm.
And you hear those things, and so we go out to lunch every Tuesday after his physical therapy,
Hmm.
and we're having just talks and everything, and those little things just reminded me that, I mean, there's a lot of things that are annoyances, but are they really big problems? Because I have my health. I'm able to run. I'm able to run extremely long distances. I can do any athletic activity. So in the grand scheme of things, life's not too bad.
Mm,
And a lot of and I've seen guys also who successful career and everything ignored their health for
mm,
decades,
mm,
and so accumulated great wealth. But now that great wealth that they accumulated, they have to give it all back
mm,
because they're trying to buy back their health, or
mm,
they can't do certain things with their family because they were putting it off because I just needed to be successful. I just needed to do this in my career, and that time came, but now they can't do it.
mm.
So so I kind of had a firsthand experience, and so that's kind of what shapes my whole perspective on this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you again for explaining that, and thank you again for sharing that story. And I've heard this story before, so thank you again for that.
Hmm.
Julian, let me ask you this: what is executive health? Uh, that is some small empire that you started from something to something. Can you explain how do you start and how is it going today?
Hmm. Yeah, on a surface level, someone would probably see executive health and say, "Oh, it's just for executives and entrepreneurs." But I like to sometimes maybe when people actually talk to me and everything and peel back a couple layers, it's really about being the CEO of your health and life, taking control of everything. And once again, like my family is an influence on this, is a lot of times they felt powerless. They felt like they didn't have control. And I never liked that. That didn't sit well with me.
Hmm,
And so as I was on a run, this wasn't originally the name of my business.
hmm,
It's morphed over time.
hmm,
And this just stuck out to me. And it's like, and then I was also at a meeting one time, and the guy was like, "Man, you're like the CEO of somebody's health, aren't you?" And I was like, I kind of like that. I think I'm gonna go with that. And so I looked it up, and um, I wanted the IO because that's more of a tech thing, and
hmm.
I'm pretty big into tech as well. So it was just a natural marriage.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you again. So, how important is health and technology for you? Because it
Hmm.
seems like we're coming to a place, which is today, that we only talk about health and technology.
Hmm.
Data is one thing that we strive to get because they're telling us, "Oh, you're having a crappy day. Why am I having a crappy day? Oh, I'm having a great day is because of my X data." So, what are your thoughts on data telling us stories?
Yeah, that's the thing where once again you have to realize that you are in that the data doesn't control you. You control the data. The data is just there for insights,
Hmm,
but there's nuance involved, and that can't be replaced.
hmm,
And that's the critical element that is forgotten a lot of times now. My data told me today that it's a so-so recovery day.
hmm,
I don't feel that way, not at all. But a lot of times it's close to being correct. It's not absolute.
hmm,
I'll take it into consideration a little bit, but I also understand my body pretty well. So, and so I can go with that. But what the data does is it offers awareness. It gives me awareness. It's teaching me certain behaviors that I do, gives certain results and feedback.
hmm,
And whether those are desirable or not, those are up to the person. But it's helping me become a better person because I'm leveraging it as a tool.
hmm,
And the way I see technology is coming whether we like it or not.
hmm.
So why not find a way that we can use this to become better versions of ourselves and to increase our quality of life?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Thank you so much for that. You know, there back in the time we didn't have data to collect. There's a lot of things that our elderlies grew up with, did not know.
Hmm.
And I think now we know. I think we're more curious to understand what that data is all about, right? There's some few things that I found out about my family, which they did not even know. I'm pretty sure you're going through the same thing. So I think we're in a phase now that I think my kids and the kids' kids will get full data about the whole entire family generations. Am I right or wrong in that?
Yeah, I think you're pretty spot on with that. Is that even now when I got back my genetic report, all it was to me was it just offered clues of where I came from in the past, but I knew my future was still in my own hands,
Hmm,
and I knew that could be molded.
hmm,
And that, I think that's the part of epigenetics, to tie back to the beginning, is that the epigenetics is an offer into the future of what could be the possibilities,
Mm.
whereas just the genetics, and getting our sample back is just clues to where we came from in our past.
Mm.
And I think in the future, to go on that, is I think they'll get this earlier, much earlier than we did, and I think they'll just be able to evolve and become better people even
All right.
sooner, and even probably more conscious and higher performing versions than me and you. But I
Mm.
think that's the natural progression of life. One of the things my dad told me is that, um, and kind of like his dad, my grandfather told him, is that, I expect you to probably to have opportunities I didn't have. That's the natural progression of life, to put you in better positions to succeed. That's some of the things that you can be most proud of.
Mm. Yeah, thank you again, Julian. I didn't grow up in that time, but I can tell you one thing, that they were totally free birds at that time, and they didn't really care of what was going on. Well, they did care, but didn't care. I hope that makes sense to you. And now it's, I think, more controlled and data oriented, and maybe not controlled, but at least now we have a vision of where to go.
Hmm.
So I think there are two different worlds that we're living in now, when it comes to health and data, and stories that they're telling us. So, Julian, thank you again for being here. But before you leave, do you have any last words to all my Back to Basic listeners and my viewers? And how is your journey on Back to Basics too? On top of that.
Yeah. The show. Well, let's see. Let's start with the message. And hmm, this is more of a way to just live life, and it's do it for the intention, not the attention. And it's just a way that I go about life. It's just being highly intentional with everything that I do, from my relationships, from my exercise training regimen, my nutrition, and it's a helpful ethos, almost like a compass, to help me with my decisions on a daily basis. And my journey with Back to Basics is, well, first of all, it's been a fantastic experience knowing you, being on this show, and for all the technology and everything that I use, at the end of the day, it's still about the basics, the fundamental habits,
Hmm.
because that's the foundation, just like a house. Um, if you don't have if you don't build this foundation on this house, these beautiful pictures, this picture behind me, and it wouldn't be nothing. The ceiling, nothing, it'll just fall, but you need something sturdy to support you, to
Hmm.
support the bed and all of this stuff, and that's the foundation, and that's what the going back to health is. That's where that exercising, the stress reduction, stress mitigation, having loving relationships, finding fulfillment in your career and work. Those are the foundations. The cool gadgets and stuff. That's the icing on the cake.
Yeah, yeah, Julian, thank you again for coming here, and thank you for those kind words about the show and everything else. So we will definitely stay in touch when it comes to, I don't know, Julian 2.0 version, because I would love to get to know you a lot better, and you share more nuggets about what's the next, if whatever Julian's all about. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, and I love the questions that you asked. These are a little different than typically what I'm asked, and so I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you again, Julian. So, guys, today we spoke with Julian, and we talked about the basics of health, didn't we? Well, we talked about that, what we grew up with and what our parents and generations grew up with. And today in the world, we're living with data. Data is one thing that it tells you stories, tells you a dimension of where you're going to go. And there's one main thing that we both said is health is wealth, or wealth is health. That's up to you to decide at the end of the episode. Now, as usual, as always, there's a quote of the day for Back to Basics, and hopefully Julian will like this. The quote is, data are just summaries of thousands of stories. Tell a few of those stories to help make that data meaningful. Now, Julian did say that data is just there. Now it's up to you to how to go and design that for yourself and everyone else around you, because everyone else is depending on you. That's just how life is. Now, as usual, as always, what do we always say at the end of the episode? Everything in life goes back to basics, and that's all we did. Thank you again. Take care, God bless, and I'll see you next time on Back to Basics. Jullian, how was that for you?
Man, that was an awesome close. I'm jealous of the closing ability. I got to work on mine. That was awesome. That was awesome. I love that quote too. I might end up like either writing something on.
Hi guys, thank you again for tuning in to Back to Basics and listening to the excellent episode that we had today with our guest. You know, with your love and support, we do need you to at least rate our show, review our show, because it does make us stronger day by day, week by week, as I usually say on my episodes. And there are 3 things in this episode that it makes a hit for me, which is the content, the guest, and definitely the host. So guys, take care, God bless, and remember, everything in life goes back to basics, and that's what we did today, guys. Guys, take care, God bless, and see you next time on Back to Basics.